to AI Revolution Digest, where businesses get smarter. I'm Jesslyn.
I'm Celia. Together we show you how AI drives real results.
And because the future isn't waiting, let's dive right in.
Law, technology, and geopolitics are intersecting in ways we have never seen before. Now let's welcome our guest speaker for the day, Attorney Floudas. Sir, thank you for being here. Can you tell our listeners who are you and what is it that you do?
Yes, I'm a transnational lawyer and an academic. I am a legal advisor who specializes in tech and an AI governance and policy theorist. My current position is as a visiting scholar in AI governance at Downing College, University of Cambridge, and I'm also an affiliate professor at the Law Faculty of Immanuel Kant Baltic Federal University, where I actually lecture on artificial intelligence regulation. I'm currently involved in the European AI Office's plenary, which is drafting the Code of Practice for General Purpose Artificial Intelligence. And also I am participating in a focus group of the British government for an independent UK AI Safety Office. And I have helped UNESCO and CNIL and the OECD with some of the drafting plans on artificial intelligence.
Thank you, sir. So one of the things that we're most curious about is what makes AI special. It's a dual-use technology, meaning it has both benefits for civilians while also for military use. So one of the questions would be, what legal frameworks should be in place, and should it include military AI applications, or will countries refuse to regulate this space due to strategic interests?
Countries will regulate that space because they certainly would not want to have a completely open AI military space, even if they feel that they are at the forefront of it. In the same way that weapons of mass destruction, whether that would be biological weapons and chemical weapons, which are completely banned, or the partial ban on landmines, or of course nuclear weapons that go under the Control and Non-Proliferation Treaty of Nuclear Weapons, I believe that it would be quite easy, in fact, to get the largest countries to agree that AI would not really be used in such a fashion that A, it would get out of control itself, B, it would leave humans outside the loop in targeting and executing battle plans. And I assume also that would be the case in what concerns additional peripheral items in fighting, such as, let's assume that there is an artificial intelligence that is questioning prisoners of war. This kind of thing would probably become prohibited, and everyone will be happy to do so.
You signed the open letter calling for a moratorium on advanced AI development. What specific criteria should be met before resuming AI advancement safely?
I did sign that moratorium because I am of the view, as many others, much more important luminaries than me, that where we're going now with the rapid advances of artificial intelligence is going to create big problems for society, human society as we know it, and eventually we may be in the way to actually create a catastrophic and cataclysmic situation, risk for humanity. And that is why I suggest also that we should stop the current forefront frontier AI development until we have had time to sit together and actually taken stock of what is going on, what the risks are, how far we will be able to control them, and then in a much more organized way and thoughtful way, we can proceed as a society, as a planet, all countries together, we can proceed, everyone according to their means, into furthering this research and development.
It's interesting that you said that we need to slow down the deployment of AI even when we don't really understand it fully so that we can manage and mitigate its risk. So when you go to LinkedIn at the moment, there's a lot of sentiment saying that, oh, the EU is pushing down too much in regulations. If we keep doing this, then we're going to be left behind in this AI race. So what do you say to that, especially when, let's say, you're a smaller AI startup?
Well, if you're a smaller AI startup, you can now rely on what is out there as open source models. And there are some pretty developed open source models. They pose their own threats, and I am of the opinion that open source models should be banned completely in artificial intelligence. The best quote that there is around it is by Geoffrey Hinton, who won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics and is considered one of the grandfathers of artificial intelligence. And it goes like that: allowing large artificial intelligence models to be open sourced is the equivalent of allowing nuclear weapons to be sold at the corner shop. So this is what a startup would do at this stage, although I believe that very soon this will not be possible. AI startups will be able to get the models and the weights from the very large companies and would be able to actually work on them to do something very specific. I don't think that at this very moment, as we are, an AI startup would be able to create as something as completely new and ponderous and an advancement in frontier AI than what we have already. Going back to the first part of your question, which is the most pertinent, however, there are a lot of voices saying that we shouldn't regulate any longer because that would be pushing innovation back. Well, I think that you will agree with me, especially in view of the last 3 years, that the last thing that we have a risk of currently is AI innovation. This goes at such a pace that no one can even understand what the others are doing. Look at what the DeepSeek debacle meant. So are we really harming innovation? I think it's exactly the opposite. What we should be doing is finally get together and regulate the risks, the massive risks that exist from AI on so many levels.
As AI continues to evolve rapidly, different regions are adopting distinct regulatory approaches. From your own experience, how do you perceive the differences in AI regulation between the EU, the US, and China?
Well, currently, the more advanced regulation is that of the European Union, the EU AI Act, which also has its code of practice for the creators of general purpose AI models, essentially the very largest models that we currently have out there in the market. The Chinese are in the process of adding to their rules in artificial intelligence, and they don't seem to allow a complete Wild West in artificial intelligence. Just to give you an example, 2 years ago, they introduced the most stringent rules of the whole planet in what regards algorithmic trading. Now, algorithmic trading is not exactly artificial intelligence, but that gives us hopefully a window to look into their ultimate goals of how they are going to approach this. As for the United States, there have been some very good steps for progress, but unfortunately, as it happens and became very obviously yesterday, at the AI summit in Paris, the AI safety part is for the current US administration is certainly an impediment at best and a problem at worst. And they are looking into innovation as though they didn't have enough already. And this is where we stand now.
Yeah, just to say that in LinkedIn, there's always a joke saying that US innovates, EU regulates. So I think that's the reason why there's a clash between the two. So one of the concerns about AI is how it's going to impact the labor market. And just like what you said, that the Vice President, J.D. Vance, said that, look, right now, I want to make sure that AI is for the American people. It's going to help them be more productive with their jobs, and alignment and control might take a step back. So for you, considering the potential for AI to disrupt, and it is currently disrupting the labor markets, what policies should be in place to manage economic transitions and support affected workers?
I'm going to turn back the question to you. You're both MBA students, which means that you are budding managers, big, high-level managers or entrepreneurs. Now, what would you do with artificial intelligence right now? Tell me very briefly, and then I will build it onto this.
Okay, so just to say that Sarah and I were not MBA students, we're still currently in the undergrad level. So what we're currently doing now is we're using a lot of AI tools, especially ChatGPT, with our schoolwork because it really helps us to be more efficient in our research. So that's what I would say. For example, if I'm going to do an internship, I might ask ChatGPT to look at this company and say, hey, what are the exact skills that this company is looking for? What are the things that I would still need to develop for me to be a best fit for this candidate? So I would say as a student, I would want to use AI because that's something that most companies are pushing it for days. So I believe that if I don't use these AI tools, or if the school would not encourage me, I won't develop the skills for me to be ready for the workforce. And Sarah and I, we have interviewed the HR head of China Bank, and she did say that those who would be left behind, it's not AI who's going to replace people, it's those who know how to use AI. So I think that's a sentiment.
And
yeah.
you think that all these companies are jumping all over themselves in order to introduce AI in order to keep exactly the same number of employees that they have now? You mentioned the Bank of China that probably has, let's say, 100,000 employees. Do you think that their ultimate motive is not to cut these employees down by 70%? Can you imagine the money that this will save them? I mean, come on, let us not fool ourselves that this is an opportunity, a massive economics opportunity. You don't need to have a PhD in political economy to understand that all this, the 60% of the global GDP right now originates from, is actually paying for labor. Or rather, I should put it better, the current labor costs in world economy right now are equivalent to 60% of the global GDP. This is how much we pay, all of us, for labor and services and goods on the planet. Now, if you're a company, don't you realize that this massive trillions of euros of the 60%, you would be able actually to save it. But if you save it along all the others, what is going to happen? It is going to accrue to those with capital. And you and I, what we have to offer is our labor. We do not necessarily have so much capital in order to live on our capital. If our labor becomes worthless, then what is going to become of us? So what I would advise you to is actually organize with other students and try to go to your business school and say, look, we are not turkeys who are voting for Christmas here. We want to understand AI, but frankly, learning AI in the non-technical capacity, because none of us is a computer scientist, is not necessarily that difficult. In fact, as you see, it is actually aimed at assisting, as things stand now, the lower level of competencies, because it hasn't reached the higher level of competencies yet. It will do. Now, if I were you at this stage in my life, I would actually lobby my own university, my own institution, to become a sort of AI-free institution. And you know what? Once 2 or 3 or 6 very prestigious universities around the world start advertising that they have become AI-free, possibly AI-free is a bit of a reaction that wouldn't go down too well, but certainly not AI-based institutions, and they will in fact give much more attention to the original way of teaching and lecturing and creating full and well-rounded students, then I believe that this is going to resonate and we may see a backlash.
You have worked on AI in diverse contexts, from Vietnam to the European Union. Which project has had the most significant impact on your current perspective on AI?
My perspective on AI has been primarily created through my reading and my theoretical discussions and learning more about the potential problems and conflicts that will arise from AI. Admittedly, until now, me as a person on AI governance, I have not been so far influenced by the projects that I've been involved in, but I have been rather ineffectively, I guess, trying to influence these projects themselves in order to offer a much more human compatible AI. And of course, as you have realized, I'm in favor of increased artificial intelligence governance as opposed to increased AI opportunities for all, because I believe this is going to be detrimental on several ways, not just losing our jobs or the bias and discrimination and fake news. So I would say that one should become much more accustomed to reading what the current scholars and theoreticians and practitioners of artificial intelligence are talking about. If you have people like Yoshua Bengio or Stuart Russell or Geoffrey Hinton that we mentioned before as well, and they are the people who have won the Turing Prizes and the Nobel Prizes because they have done so much to bring what we currently see as AI models to the fore. And they have all become complete skeptics. And they say, we should stop. They are the people who are signing the letters to pause AI models. They are the people who give interviews the whole time that this is going to turn out bad for us. They're not Luddites in any sense of the word. They're the people who created this. And what is happening now? They are the ones warning us. This is what people should be reading about, and not these items on the internet, on LinkedIn that you mentioned just before, that say this is all far too regulated and we should do away with the little regulation that we have managed to impose so far.
Yes, thank you for that. And I just want to go back to your point on how we should make our universities AI free, but not AI based. And Sarah and I, we always have this discussion with the professors because the professor would say, hey, I use this, I don't know, it's AI tool saying that your work is whatever percent generated by AI. So therefore, I believe that you use AI, then I'm going to fail you in this course. So I think in terms of education, there's still a backlash, especially from some professors, but there are those that believe that we should use AI. Now, I just want to go back to your point on how AI is not something that's very rocket science. You can read it on yourself. So I've done my homework before this interview. So I've read the framework by Georgetown University, and one of the things that you can look AI on policy is a thing called AI triad. So it consists of data, algorithms, and computes. So within these three frameworks, which one do you believe governments should focus on, and in what ways would this shape their policies?
The AI triads has technical application. Governments are not interested in this in what regards policy. This is for the computer scientists and the people who create AI. What governments are concerned are the effects, the uses, misuses, and possible rogue AIs. The others cannot and could not constitute any kind of strategic problem for any government. What we're talking about, and this is correct, are the risks. Again, from the very simple ones such as bias and discrimination to the, let's say, the longer term ones such as disempowerment of humankind. This has nothing to do with the triad.
Some researchers argue that AI will never truly understand human values. Do you think AI might, on the contrary, understand them too well and use that knowledge to manipulate human decision or behavior?
Yes, I have come up with that suggestion myself in one of my writings, and thank you for bringing it up. I believe that, interestingly, both sides may be truth. That, in fact, AI is going to be a completely alien intellect for us, even though we have created it. And I'm sure you know about the black box problem and all these things. And of course, the more complicated it becomes, the more beyond our comprehension it is going to be. So it is going to be, it will not understand people in the sense that it will not care about the way that we think. To the extent that it cares, it would be only to manipulate us. So the truth actually encompasses both these sides. It will understand us so well because we are machines, in quotation marks, biological intellects of a finite capacity, and some AI that has become AGI and then possibly super intelligence. It would be very easy to emulate billions of us at the same time in the same program and actually see how we are going to behave both as individuals and as societies. And of course, it would be able to manipulate just as a god would. At the same time, it would not understand a human psyche and soul, if you want, in the same way that it would really not share it. It might comprehend it, but would not see it as anything implying value.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because, machine learning is just the way it is. Like if you go through the neural networks, technically speaking, the machine just learns on its own to the point that we ourselves don't really know how they got to those inputs. And the nature of AI is not really to align with human values. I think their number one concern is to do whatever is most efficient. So you have a contrast between what's efficient versus what is right. And that's the reason why we're having this discussion, right? On how are we going to regulate something. So, in our email, I asked you about DeepSeek before we had this interview, and you said, there's some countries that are banning DeepSeek. So do you believe in the near future, are we going to have AI models that are banned selectively only because of national origin or versus their technical capabilities?
Definitely the former. It is going to be a replay that we saw at a lesser level not too long ago at all, during the COVID pandemic. As you remember, there were 3 blocks essentially of that created their own versions of vaccines, and the Western vaccines were utilized in the West and of course given to some other countries. The Chinese came up with their own, the Russians came up with their own as well. And of course, they were trying to give them to as many third world countries as well. If that happens with a means to prevent something that the whole world found, and very obviously and objectively a negative thing, such as the COVID-19 virus, you can imagine in a situation where from the final outcome, like an AI model, we expect not only negative, but hopefully positive stuff, you can imagine how protective they're going to be. So yes, DeepSeek has already been banned in Italy. Greece is contemplating to follow suit. It has already been banned from use in the civil services and the government of United States, Taiwan, obviously, Australia, and a couple of other places. And I would not be too surprised if within 6 months that this podcast has come out, the whole DeepSeek would be banned for us who are based in the West.
My last question is kind of philosophical. Do you believe that in the long run, humans should merge with AI rather than trying to contain it?
That is exactly the singularity concept that Ray Kurzweil has been talking about for the past several decades. I think that this would be the ultimate nullification of mankind. Call me traditional, call me a speciesist, call me a pro-carbon biology activist. I think that this would be really a very sad end for us. Now, I understand, and I have read their arguments, that there are others who think that this will be our only way to survive in the very long future. Frankly, their arguments hold a lot of water, in the sense that if we think of surviving billions of years, I'm not talking about thousands or millions here further, as a species, obviously in billions of years, you can imagine that our species, even naturally, if it existed, would have evolved into something radically different. We would not even be able to recognize that it is us. But plausibly, it would end at some point, as every species that has lived on Earth has ended. The only thing that might stop us from being eradicated would be our intelligence. And what will be the top crowning of our intelligence? AI. So I can very much understand why Kurzweil and several others are talking about the singularity. I hope that this is not going to happen but for several thousand years from now.
Well, I hope if that were to happen, I'm already dead, by that point. So anyway, okay, just go back to something more serious. Like when DeepSeek was first released, there's a lot of speculations that they stole some of the chips or they stole some things from OpenAI, and that's how they were able to create DeepSeek at a fraction of the cost. But regardless, what does this suggest about the effectiveness or lack thereof of current AI intellectual property protections? Because not just DeepSeek, I think, especially when ChatGPT was first released, there's already some backlash that they got data that was copyright protected.
I think it is quite ironic to be talking about artificial intelligence model intellectual property protection, since the creation of these models that you and I use on a daily basis have entailed the largest intellectual property infringement in the history of mankind. So these people should not be talking about this. On the other hand, as well, we have open source AI models, which by definition contain no intellectual property. So I would not see that there is any cause for concern there. And it is going to be quite true that artificial intelligence models will be trying to replicate and do some industrial spying on each other. It's possible that DeepSeek has done the same. OpenAI has been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. One needs to be very technically knowledgeable in order to ascertain this or not. I personally, as an AI governance expert, I believe that it is, as I said, possible that they did that. And I also think that they also underplay the amount of resources that is being utilized. They claim that this whole model was trained, the cost of training was $6 million US. Somehow I think it is going to be much more than that, because it took, I don't know, $40 billion for OpenAI GPT-03, the current model, to actually be trained. Now, I understand, and we all know, that as economies of scale and higher technical capabilities are evolved, all these things are going to become much cheaper, much more efficient, and much quicker. This goes without saying. Now, whether that has suddenly happened, that from Model 1 to Model 2, we have had a jump of minus 90%, somehow I'm not convinced.
Okay, so that's one of the technical questions. I want to be more personalized, which is what made you decide that this is something that you would want to focus your career at? Like, what made you started in law in the first place? Tell us more about that.
Yes, I have been a technology lawyer for quite some time, starting with internet law and domain names law. So I was always interested in the legal aspects of new technologies. In the last 3 years, and I became much more interested in artificial intelligence. And in fact, I started giving a series of lectures on artificial intelligence regulation, and I'm very proud of that, before GPT became a thing. In fact, at that time, it was very difficult to find any law student who would be interested in artificial intelligence regulation, because it was not in anyone's mind that this is even a thing or will become a thing anytime soon. Of course, by the second year I was doing that, GPT-3 had come online and into the public consciousness with a vengeance. And there was a huge queue outside the classroom of hundreds of students who wanted to learn much more about it. So that had already happened, rather accidentally, if you want, but as an organic growing phase, even before. Now, the more I became interested in AI governance, the more I realized that this is the equivalent of The Last Question, Isaac Asimov's famous short story, that this is really the alpha and the omega of mankind's problems, which puts all the rest, it just throws them into oblivion. If we do not manage to crack this, and it's extremely difficult, then we are definitely going to stop existing sooner or later. So that is why I actually thought that if I could be someone who might assist in my very limited capacities. The whole train of thought that might help the whole of humanity, this is something that resonates with a lot of people, and it certainly resonated with me.
Okay, so I'm just curious since you have a very long and distinguished career in international law. So I'm curious as to if you could change one aspect of the international legal system today, what would it be and why?
I would try to change the implementation of international law, rather the enforcement. Of course, everyone has been talking about enforcement, that it is non-existent. The current enforcement is haphazard in the sense that if the entity, the state that breaches international law is one of ours, then we are going to enforce it. If it's one of theirs, then we look the other way. I will not go into issues such as the war in Ukraine or in Gaza. I will just point out what is happening with the International Criminal Court. There's a large number of countries saying, yes, well done, bravo, this is brilliant. And then you have countries like Russia and United States, most egregiously, saying that, and Israel now, not only saying that we do not abide by it, but they are actually taking measures and sanctions against the people who work at the International Criminal Court. Now, if then it would be somehow a possibility to create an international law structure that would be acceptable by everyone or most of us, and would be enforceable by a more objective way, then that's what would be needed. Having said that, it may be, and I am going to mention that because it would make my theoretical opponents happy, that the solution for that is to create an artificial intelligence that will not be any country's artificial intelligence, but it will be the UN artificial intelligence, and give it power, including military power, to actually enforce it against everyone who infringes international law. That sounds theoretically brilliant, but of course what you have then is Skynet.
Thank you for that. So my last question would be, looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of international law and AI, and what concerns you the most?
What excites me the most is the creation of an UN-backed international treaty on the control and non-proliferation of frontier artificial intelligence systems. I am already working on the blueprints of this, and I believe that this is going to be, as things stand now, the single most important step, rather than bits and pieces that we are trying to do in the US, in China, in the European Union. Not that these are not important, because law, in addition to its regulatory force, also has an ideological and pedagogical effect. So it is very good to have them. But I think that we should really come up with such a control and non-proliferation treaty quite soon. And after that, I will feel quite a bit safer in all my worries about the risks. My biggest concern is exactly the contrary, that nothing is going to happen, and there will be a constant running battle between governments and companies and people who are well-meaning, who think that we should go all down the artificial intelligence path, and the other side, who are the more risk aware, where I would probably put myself in it, and we would be constantly battling it out in order to find out in order to create a safe artificial intelligence environment, by which time it may be too late if we have AGA arising and nothing has been put in place to stop it. Another major concern of mine, I should add, is that I am really concerned that the way that humanity in the West thinks nowadays, the future artificial intelligence models will be awarded rights of a conscious being. And because there will be this usual debate, well, they have self-awareness, not yet, but they may get. And which, of course, will be very difficult or impossible to understand. They have self-awareness, they feel pain, they feel remorse, they feel sad, they feel upset, they feel lonely. And so we make them, we give them the equivalent status of other conscious entities on this planet, which is essentially only one, us, Homo sapiens. If we have done that, that will be the biggest mistake we will ever make, because after that, artificial intelligence models would be untouchable and unregulatable.
Thank you for that. And before we should end, I think we should play a game. So this is a little game that we play with all of our guests. It's just a 1-minute game where we just ask you simple questions. I give you 2 options and you just choose whatever you want. It's just 1 minute. You don't need to think. It's a fun game. So let us know if you're ready, then we're going to start the clock.
Let's
You
go.
ready?
Right.
Okay, let's go. First question. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Ice cream or cake?
Cake.
City or countryside?
Countryside.
Sneakers or sandals?
Sneakers.
Comedy or horror?
Horror.
Rain or snow?
Snow.
Travel or stay home?
Stay home.
You're introvert. Books or movies?
Books.
TikTok or Instagram?
Neither.
Summer or winter?
Winter.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Cash or cards?
Cash.
Sing or dance?
Sing.
Action or romance?
Romance.
Gold or silver?
Gold.
Ocean or lake?
Lake.
Time's up.
Hoodie or... Oh, time's up. Thank you, sir, for being here. So before we leave, where can people reach out to you
yes.
if they want to connect?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm working now on a number of drafting committees for regulations. In most important, of course, is the AI Act Code of Practice, but also advising a number of other organizations and governments. And I am drafting the blueprint of the first suggestion of an AI control and non-proliferation treaty. People can reach me at LinkedIn, and they can also write to me and approach me by email, which is also to be found on my LinkedIn profile if one looks careful.
Thank you, sir. And to our listeners, I hope you learned a lot today. Thank you for being here and see you in our next episode. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.